This episode of Badass Agents Podcast is brought to you by Jason Smith team at Nova Home Loans. Jason, a Navy veteran, has been recognized as one of the top 100 loan originators in the country. There is no task too big or too small for the Jason Smith team. Every client counts. For the best rates and great service, contact Jason at 480-227-6231 or visit novahomeloans.com. I personally stand by his service, and so do thousands of satisfied clients. That's Jason Smith at Nova Home Loans, NMLS number 210839. Maybe it's not okay. Maybe it's not okay to have a drink every weekend just because all my friends do. Maybe it's not okay to go out and eat fast food every day. Maybe it's not okay after a big obstacle to shut myself down for days. These are things we have to think about. Welcome to another episode of Mindset Mastery. I am your host, AZ Araujo, and we are having some technical difficulties here, but I am in the right mindset to deliver some content, and it looks like I'm only hearing out of one ear, which is okay. We're going to have to figure this stuff out. And Richard, I don't mind you stepping in front of the camera in order to get this fixed. But, you know, I had a conversation this week with one of our agents about, you know, being predisposed to certain lifestyle, right? To certain environments, predisposed to think in a certain way, and also stepping into certain things that we think should be in our lives. And this came about as I was reviewing some of the entries for the Do the Work Challenge. And there's a section there that asks, like, why is it important now? And if you don't know about the Do the Work Challenge, perfect. That worked. If you don't know about the Do the Work Challenge, it is a 30-day challenge where we're really trying to rewire, and Carla's trying to rewire the way you think about health, the way you think about your body, and how it affects other aspects of your life, including your business. It affects your family. It affects your mood. It affects your confidence, your certainty, and your emotions. And it is like a rewiring process, and it's almost like a detox period, right? But one of the participants responded in this format, and it hit me down to the core because I think we're all predisposed to certain thought processes. We're all predisposed to suffering from certain illnesses, from suffering even from certain financial hardships, right? Just because we've seen it in our environments, we've seen it from our family. And this really hit home because she's seeing it in the genetics aspect of it. She's seeing it in the illness aspect of it. And she has to rewire the mindset, right? Because she is predisposed. It's like these boxes are already laid out for this individual. Just like many of you, your boxes are already laid out for how far you think you can take your business, on how you should raise your family, on how you should treat your spouse. We're already predisposed because of what we've seen in our environments. And oftentimes the biggest influences are our parents. And then it comes to the environment, and then, you know, the people we surround ourselves with. But this is the response, and I'm going to go ahead and read it word for word as she wrote it. And she says, "I'm not willing to just accept the way things are. Only going to get worse from here. It matters that I stop making excuses and conquer self-control. If I don't, I will become my mother. I will become my grandmother and most of my aunts. High blood pressure, heart conditions, dementia, osteoporosis, etc. Dying at early ages from stupid preventative conditions." So when we start looking at why we want to do certain things, or why we suffer with our business on a constant basis, why we suffer from our finances in certain situations, why we suffer from, you know, only making so much money, and also the weight we put on or the way we take care of ourselves, we don't realize that we're stepping into these predisposed boxes, right? These predispositions, kind of like these frames. And we walk at it aimlessly without real intention, understanding that we have full control of this. We don't have to step into those boxes. And the way we can do that is to look at our environments, our current environments, and realize that we can break those cycles. And if we work hard enough, we could even break the cycles of genetic dispositions, these illnesses. We can fight them off. We can ward them off. But it requires awareness. It requires you taking a step back and realizing this is not the box that I want to walk into. Yes, it's been there, and I've only seen that box because it's been genetically and it's been inherently passed down from generation to generation, and here I am stepping into this box. And this has to do with also attitude, right? I had someone come to me one time, a client of mine, says, I'm having a hard time in my marriage, and my wife doesn't get it. She doesn't get it. And this was his response because he's been, predisposed to think a certain way. He says, I work very hard, and I got it to a point where she doesn't have to work. She stays home with a baby. And, my question was, is that what she wanted? Is that what she wanted? Because how do you think she's going to feel when she sees another woman also in the same situation, has kids, but is running a business? How do you think she's going to feel as she's cleaning up after your child and you're expecting her to make dinner and you're upset that the house is a mess and you're presenting all these problems because you're predisposed to think that that's what she wants? And here's the reality. She's also predisposed to thinking that that's where she needs to be, when in reality she's growing unhappy with the current situation. Now, I'm not saying that staying at home, being a stay-at-home mom is something wrong with that. What I'm saying is, in their situation, they don't realize that that's not what they want, but because they walked into these frames, there they are. And there's examples of that all over the place. And please don't misquote me on anything about, how I view certain things. It's just the reality. I had to break certain cycles in the way I was predisposed to certain thought process. The type of money I was supposed to make, how far I was supposed to take our family finances. Like, I was supposed to be limited based on my environments and based on what I saw. My path was like, okay, get a job with benefits and retire. That's what I was always told as a young kid. Get a good job for a corporation. Get a government job. And it was hard to break that, because at the moment I saw a greater opportunity, I fought that. I said, no. I worked hard to be here in this situation so I can have the security, the stability, and the safety for my family. So breaking that cycle was me taking a step back and realizing this is not the frame I want to walk into. And some of you are walking into a frame that you know how it's going to end up. You know how this is going to play out. And you can view this by simply looking at your genetics, looking at your family, looking at mom, looking at dad, looking at uncles, looking at, aunts. And yet we refuse to change those thought processes. And we're stepping right into it, and we're going to suffer from those same illnesses or the same problems that they're facing. And this is on all aspects. It could be, like I said, your health. It could be your financial health, your emotional health, your mental health. Oftentimes we struggle and don't even know why, and it's because of the things we're predisposed to. We're just walking right into it aimlessly. So we have to be aware, and we break these cycles by awareness, by self-development, by realizing what's working and what's not. This is hard. This is hard because, again, we're fighting everything we know and love. The environments, the family. There's certain things that we're going to try to battle, and sometimes it's not going to be the most popular. But, again, it's on all of us to realize that there's a different reality to everything. Just the other day, and I'm going to tell you a little personal story. I remember, even with the things that I currently have now, I wasn't predisposed to be able to see any of this. It was always for someone else. It was always with someone else with rich parents, someone else with a better education, someone else, that was lucky. And, I started thinking about this even more. I was taking my daughters to Chick-fil-A. And, they play volleyball, and sometimes they crave this food. And I'm okay with that because they know how to take care of themselves as far as eating the right foods. But sometimes they want the Chick-fil-A. So I drive in, and, the teller comes up, and they walk up to your car. And she's like, wow, what a beautiful car. I'm all, thanks. And she's a young girl. And, and then she just asked me, how much did this cost? And I hesitated because I felt almost sick to my stomach when that number came into my brain. And I was almost embarrassed to tell her what I paid for it. And then when I did tell her, she couldn't comprehend that number. She says, what happens if it breaks down? And I'm like, well, it's not going to break down. That's what I was thinking in my mind. But, that's the way I saw things growing up. I only saw it from a certain, mindset of how far or how much certain things can cost and how far I can actually go in life. And, my first step was to feel guilty about it and almost shame myself for making such a ridiculous purchase, because they are. Cars at that price, right, are ridiculous. It's a ridiculous purchase. But I always remember my coach saying, listen, if it gets you up in the morning to go out and break any cycles that you saw fit, right, to drive you and to fire you up, then go for that. Not to necessarily make you, but to reflect what's inside of you, to reflect your grit, to reflect what you're going to be, what you are, not necessarily to try to coat or try to become who you are, but just a reflection of who you are. And I think everything that I've done up to this point is truly a reflection. But I had to break all those cycles to realize that, hey, listen, I'm not here just to coast. I'm not here just to, walk into these frames that have been predisposed for me. I need to realize that it's my responsibility. It is mine and solely mine that I do things to improve my position, to improve my marriage, to improve my health. But we got to be able to identify these behaviors that keep us back. And listen, I almost walked into these frames as a teenager, getting into trouble, right? Almost losing my life through being a knucklehead. Those were my predispositions. But those were also wake-up calls to realize, hey, listen, this is not what I want. And just because it's been set, and this is what likely happens to individuals that grow up in these neighborhoods, in these income brackets, usually go down. It doesn't have to be my story. And it took awareness. And sometimes it takes these great lessons for us to realize that we got to change our behaviors. And a lot of it has to do with mental, physical, and emotional health, on how we handle certain things. And I see great talent out there, but I also see sabotage. I see sabotage on their own business because they don't know how to handle struggle. They don't know how to handle obstacles. They're handling it just like their parents did, just like their family does, where they shut everything down, where they think there's no solution, and they completely kill any momentum that they were building. So they always limit themselves on what they can create. And that might be you. You might be on a roll, and then you let an obstacle outside of you just completely chop your legs from under you, only so you can work hard and get back to the level you were at originally, when you're going to use all that energy, all that drive to get to a completely different level. But we don't know how to manage that because all we're doing is walking into frames, the frames that are being predisposed for us. So we all have to do self-reflection, self-development, to realize I don't have to go down these paths. I don't have to end up sick like my parents, like my aunts. Maybe it's not okay. Maybe it's not okay to have a drink every weekend just because all my friends do. Maybe it's not okay to go out and eat fast food every day. Maybe it's not okay after a big obstacle to shut myself down for days. These are things we have to think about. Maybe it's not okay treating my spouse a certain way. This is things we have to think about. How you're raising your kids, marriage. We're all predisposed to these things, but if we ultimately want happiness, and less struggle, we have to improve our position and break the cycles that have been predisposed for us. We don't have to walk into those frames. Yet many of us walk into them aimlessly. Here's a frame, walking in. It's like, okay, let's break these cycles. And I love what this individual said. It matters that I stop making excuses and conquer self-control. If I don't, I will become my mother and my grandmother and most of my aunts. High blood pressure, heart conditions, dementia, osteoporosis, etc. Dying at early ages from stupid preventative conditions. And she was walking into those frames. What she doesn't realize is financially she was walking into those frames. How far she can actually get in life. How happy she can be within her relationships, within herself. Because if we allow that in one area of our lives, it's going to happen in others. It's going to bleed into others. So we can ward off regardless. We can ward off regardless of where we're at, these predispositions that are caused by environments, family, genetics, illnesses, the predispositions to having a certain mindset, financial status, how to handle obstacles. And then teach and influence others around us. I'm not supposed to have what I have. I'm not supposed to. I would say I'm 1 in a million. Those are just the realities. But those that are able to step away from that, regardless of the environments, regardless of how they were raised, regardless of financial status, decided to take self-responsibility. And they went against the current. They were different. They did something different than everyone else within their family, everyone else within their environments, and decided that that's not the frame I'm going to walk into. So we have a decision. And right now, for many of you in the real estate industry, right now the frame is set before you by thousands and thousands of agents to have a my offer's never going to get accepted type of attitude. You're going with the flow. You're stepping into the frame everybody else is stepping into. When in reality, there are thousands of offers being accepted on a daily. It's just not yours. Because we're walking into these frames of the environments. So we got to go against the current and realize it's not going to be easy. Fighting genetics is not easy. Fighting for yourself is not easy. What's easier is just walking into these frames that have been set before you. I refuse to do that. My parents did a hell of a job raising me. But there are certain things I'm going to stop. There are certain mindsets I have stopped. There are certain behaviors I have stopped because I just didn't walk into them aimlessly. So, if you're feeling unfulfilled, maybe you walked into one too many of these frames, one too many of these boxes. If you're constantly struggling, you've walked into one too many of these frames. So this is where it begins. No more aimless choices, no more aimless decisions. Be intentional about what you want. And go after it. It's been a fun ride. And I look back, even, as ridiculous as the purchases I've made. I know where I would be if I didn't. I do these things because it drives me. I just don't want to go through life playing it too safe. And it's funny. I remember like in my 20s and my 30s, like playing it safe. Even my credit was playing it safe. Like the jumps in my credit score were very minimal for many, many years. I could only get into a certain amount because I was too afraid to put too much on credit. So I would avoid it. And my credit score would slightly increase. And to a point where, I was able to finally start buying things. And of course, I messed all that up. And as opposed to playing it safe again, I went all in. And it's amazing, like even credit scores. The more risk you put out there, the more you showcase, ability to pay back and to move and to grow, the faster things grow. That's why people, in certain financial brackets, and income levels have these tremendous scores. And it's little things like this, right? So guys, we all have these predispositions. And we all create our own truth. And I love that you said that, Cindy. And what's unfortunate, a lot of us never realize that. We always think that's just the way things are. Being accountable for my actions and reactions, I choose my mindset in the environments and frames. Following the crowd, not standing in the convictions I believe are not in my best interest. God is in control. I will praise him in the struggles and celebrations. And the greatest gift we ever got, right? If you're a believer, the greatest gift that I feel I got is my ability to decide. It's the ability to make decisions, right? To almost realize, to imagine the whole situation play out and then make a decision, also based on past experiences. We're able to make decisions, and that's what I'm getting down to. It's all on you not to walk into these frames. You can break these cycles, these financial struggles, these emotional struggles, these mindset struggles. It is all on you. And I hope you're able to take this and approach your business differently. Approach your health. What you put into your mouths, what you put into your head, what you listen to. And guess what? It's not going to be the popular thing. It never is. It never is the popular thing. But it is always the most satisfying. Guys, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for joining me for this episode of Mindset Mastery. I hope that you're able to get something that will make you make the right decisions, right? And go after what we truly want and desire. We hold more responsibility in the only life we actually live, to live it to its maximum potential and to leave a legacy that follows us. So thank you again for joining me, and I will talk to you soon. Bye now. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Badass Agents Podcast, brought to you by AZ & Associates and Do the Work Coaching and Consulting. You can watch this and other episodes by subscribing to our channel on YouTube or by visiting us directly at badassagents.com. And of course, you can listen to this episode and many others on your preferred podcast provider.